Welcome back to video 2, our first lesson. Probably the most important salient lesson is trust. And again, inside the persuasive context, when you're selling anything, when you're trying to put forth an argument, anything like that, the person on the other side of the table, the person you're trying to persuade or sell, is always thinking, why should I trust this guy? Who is this banker? Who is this car salesman? Who is this person trying to pick me up on a date? Whatever it is, they're always asking that question. That's the elephant in the room. And again, the reason I use the metaphor of an elephant is because think about it. When you're, again, selling anything, the person over there is thinking, why should I trust you? But they're not going to say out loud, why should I trust you? Occasionally, someone's going to do that. But most of the time, they're not going to say out loud, why should I trust you? Particularly if you're in a professional context. That just isn't protocol. I surmise, though, if you're able to say out loud, once you go through this process, here's why you should trust me, because of my brand, who I am, that is you, the person viewing this, then you're dismissing the elephant right away. I use the word tembo because it means elephant in Swahili. And the reason I use elephants in the first place is a very short anecdote about me, and it relates to you, I hope. When I was a kid, my mother married a dope addict when I was 8 years of age, okay? So I saw her marry this dope addict guy, and I went to my grandparents, her parents, and I said, Grandma, my mother is with this guy, he's a loser, he's a lowlife. You know what my grandparents said? Bless their hearts, rest in peace and all that? No, everything's okay. Everything is fine. So again, they weren't even recognizing the obvious elephant in the room. And I vowed as an adult when I was in business or whatever, that I was always going to call out elephants in the room. And the first elephant we're going to call out is trust. Once again, the dynamics inside why people should trust you are always about at least 3 things, okay? Remember this, take some notes, always remember this. There's always at least 3 dynamics that compose or construct or make up, comprise trust. And they are, be transparent, be convicted, and yes, emotion. You've got to be able to be emotional to demonstrate trust. Think about it. Most people say, oh, I'm really passionate about being a plumber. I'm really passionate about being whatever the hell they are. Ask them to define their emotion, their passion, they're not able to do it. That's what we're going to do through this video series. We're going to have you and help you understand what your emotion is relative to, let's say, for example, money. Because think about it. Everyone has some kind of emotional connection to money. And I'm asking you to ask your clients in a very circumspect way, if you will. And here's a great question. How did you first learn the value of money? What was your first relationship to money? That's a great question when you're trying to earn a business relationship. You do that very carefully and very circumspectly, of course, but that's a great question. Always ask, because that's one way to begin to build trust, because everyone has an emotional connection to money. So if you're able to talk about that openly, you're able to, again, break down the barrier of trust because you're talking about emotion and how it's connected to money. Okay? Does that make any sense? I'm sure it does. We'll practice that later. Also, number 2, inside, again, trust. Inside that dynamic called trust, a second dynamic is conviction. People want to know that you stand for something. I don't care what it is. A car salesman, a banker, something other than what they do. People are thirsting for people that have conviction. If you're able to, inside that persuasive or sales context, open up the conversation such that you let folks know that you stand for something, I'm telling you, it means something because you're going to earn their trust, because it's not just about the transaction. Remember, this entire process, this entire video series isn't just about a transaction. It's about a sustainable relationship. If you just want a transaction, go ahead and do what you're doing and not worry about trust. But if you're concerned with trust, distinction, commitment, and performance, and you want a true relationship, then heed some of these techniques that I've learned over the years. And by the way, these techniques are not really anything that are a great secret. They're pretty obvious techniques, but we don't get trained on trust. When's the last time you went to a sales meeting and you had a session on trust? I don't think it happens very often. It might. But remember, like a fingerprint, each of you have your own brand. Okay? So within the context of that, how can people trust you? Phil, Mary, Georgia, Gloria, whoever you are out there in video land there, you're going to have to understand how you can bring forth your trust, have that as a discussion inside the sales process. Again, How are you going to do it? You're going to talk about your emotions, your passions. You're going to do that by talking about, for example, here's how I learned the value of money. Here's how I learned the value of conviction, whatever it might be, because then now you're demonstrated who you are. You're talking about trust. You're giving people reasons that folks can trust you other than just selling them the bank account, other than just selling them the automobile, for example, okay? So again, the other component, again, inside the construct of trust, remember, trust is one of the 4 elephants. Trust, distinction, commitment, and performance. And we're going to talk about all 4 today. And right now we're talking about trust. Within trust, transparency, conviction, and emotion. We've touched on emotion a little bit. We've talked a little bit about conviction. That is, why should you trust me? Because I stand for something that isn't just about the sales process. The third component inside trust is transparency. And this is an obvious thing that people don't talk about. You can call it honesty, you can call it integrity, you can call it whatever you want. But for example, if you're selling a house and you know the roof leaks, say, hey, you know what, the roof leaks, but here's the other great features that the house provides. We're going to deal with that roof leak. I promise I'm making a commitment about that. Again, that's commitment. That'll be video 3. If you're willing to make that commitment and you are transparent and you are authentic, people around the world are thirsting for authenticity because everything is Facebook. Here I am eating a salad with my lovely girlfriend. Who cares? What's authentic about that? People, particularly when they're buying something or you're arguing a point, they're thirsting for authenticity. So again, remember, inside the sales context, and inside that is trust. That's the first elephant in the room. People want to trust you. You've got to be able to articulate your trust. And the way you do that is you dissect your trust into at least 3 areas. You're convicted about something. You stand for something bigger than just this sale. 2, you have an emotion. You have a passion. You have something bigger than just, once again, this particular issue. You have a legacy, some emotional component that represents something bigger than just this transaction. If you're able to talk about that with your client, then you're beginning to establish trust because it's human. And the third piece is transparency. Be honest. When I used to manage 45 people in another incarnation of my career, I used to teach them a magical word that no one talks about in sales. The word is no, N-O. A lot of times we can't do something, but here's what we can do. So think about that. If somebody says, I want to buy this car from you, but will you give me free gas for a year? Of course you can't do that. Just say no. The answer is no, Mr. Client, but here's what I can do. I'll give you gas for a week. So always follow a no because you're being transparent and honest with a yes. No, I can't do that, but I can do this. That's transparency, that's honor, that's integrity, that's part of your brand. Once again, if you can't do it, don't do it. But if you're able to bring integrity, transparency into the persuasive context, it makes you distinctive, it makes you powerful, it demonstrates some commitment, but mostly it talks about trust. The most important elephant in the room is trust. How are you going to favor trust with your client? And how are you going to do it? With transparency, with conviction, and with emotion. If you can do that, you're going to be able to earn trust, one of the most important pieces inside the sales construct that folks don't get trained on.